Welcome to the Well Played Podcast, the show about all things playful and joyous. This podcast is about bringing playful learning back into our lives. Together we are finding the joy in the journey of life. Today we have two new guests for Well Played, and it is Mike Wielgus and Adam Geisen, and we are talking about gamification of professional development, right? Like gamifying the teacher PD. I'm super excited to have these guys here. If you guys could introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about yourselves, tell us about your career path a little bit here. Why don't we start with Mike?
Sure. My name is Mike Wielgus. I am an instructional technology coach for the Triad School District, which is about 20 miles east of St. Louis. My background is middle school science and technology, and I'm entering my 20th year in education and my second year as a full-time coach. Started doing this half-time in 2015, but this is the second year full-time.
Wow.
My history is very similar. I'm Adam Geisen, also instructional tech coach. Mike and I are kind of partners in the same school district there in Troy. Taught English at the high school level for 16, something like that, years. And same thing, we both kind of switched over from the classroom role to the coaching role for full-time just this past school year.
Before we get too far, this is, well, one, congratulations on you guys getting a new sort of position. Congratulations on yourselves, stretching yourselves to that new position. I think that's awesome.
It has been a fun challenge for
Yes,
sure.
it is. Yeah.
So I guess before we get too far into it, I promise listeners that we will get to the topic at hand. But just curious, as I have two tech coaches here, what advice? I know lots of tech coaches listen to this, and I know some of my close friends are becoming tech coaches this coming year. So I sort of want to pick your brain just a wee bit about what advice do you have for a first year tech coach? Because really, three close friends of mine are becoming tech coaches this year.
I think one of the biggest things, and probably one of the hardest things, and I think Mike could probably attest to this as well, is to find the balance between being, I don't know, like not necessarily forcing yourself on teachers, because obviously as tech coaches, you want to be available and you want to be there when they want help, but you got to find that balance between like, I need to help you, and forcing yourself in their classroom and then just like letting them come to you. That's been a really, really tough challenge. And one of the ways we were able to get by that was to create the PD program we're going to probably talk about here in a minute, was to sort of make ourselves available and also not so obtrusive, because I think that's one of the things that people worry about when they think coaches. They're saying somebody's going to come into my classroom, tell me I'm doing it all wrong, and try to blow everything up. And that's not our goal. Our goal is just to try to be helpful, but at the same time, not be overbearing.
And I think another thing, just like teaching students, you want to build those relationships.
Right.
And we've been in the district so long, but my experience has been middle school. So I really didn't know many of the elementary teachers. I knew some of the high school teachers, but the way that our jobs are split is that I'm responsible for kind of overseeing two elementary schools and the middle school, and Adam has the other two elementary schools and the high school.
Right. So
we were able to build these relationships with these teachers that we didn't really know very well, just because we'd never crossed paths in our daily teaching endeavors. But if we're in the building and I need help fixing a printer, even though that's technically not our job description, it's good to do that, to break the ice and build those relationships so that when they do need help with technology applications and things like that, then they're going to feel comfortable going to you for some help.
I think that it sounds like the advice clearly comes from a wealth of experience in the classroom, right? Because it comes down to building strong relationships in which, like, down the road, that sort of pays dividends for everyone involved, right? It makes you more successful at your job, but it also makes somebody else more successful in their classroom, because that's what it means to do your job well. So,
and it sure makes things more fun when you walk in a classroom and they smile, as opposed to like rolling their eyes or
Yep.
And we always try to be a little faster than like the tech repair department. People send us an email, we want to be there quick, so that people get kind of used to coming to us. And we don't necessarily, like Mike said, it's not our job necessarily to fix things, but we do want to be as responsive as fast as we possibly can, just so that, there's not that waiting, I sent them a message but never heard back or whatever.
All right.
So being there, being present, being responsive.
I like that. Like being responsive is huge. I think it's nice too when you see somebody else, because teachers are notorious for having like a ton of extra things on their plate, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And sometimes I think it's frustrating when you interact with those people that aren't teachers anymore, but they're still in the education space.
Right.
And they act very like systematically, like, well, like you got to send a work order to this person and they have to approve it to this person. And you're like, you're right here and you know how to fix this printer. Like,
so fix my printer.
You're literally going to walk away from me? That's what you're going to do right now?
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, you got to call tech support.
Like, and I just always think as a teacher that just sort of like, because if I ever did that, I'd get hauled into the principal's office and probably fired if I told parents like, my policy for responding to parents is you got to go to this system and log into this special thing, and then every Friday I go through that and I respond back to you. So that's the system. You
fill this form out in triplicate.
Yeah, like
copy.
But if I did that, like, that would be bad news. So I like that you guys are really. You're not forgetting that teacher sense that they're like, it's about helping people, and if we all do the best job we can do, it's in the end you're gonna have a good day, and that's important. So I'm super jazzed. Obviously, like you guys take gamification and you guys embed it into your PD, and I think it's probably morphed a little bit over time. Like almost all of these gamification, elements and modules do. You put it out into the wild, and it changes a little bit, and you adapt and you make those adjustments. But let's first start off with like, what was your vision? What was your goal? What was your idea? And we can kind of go into like how it changed later. Okay.
Mike, you want to start, or you want me to start?
Whatever you want.
Okay. Well, our first thing was that we needed to, as we were professional development sort of, I know the people sort of in charge of providing that now, as far as technology is concerned, it was important that we made sure that we were kind of the focal point as far as, the direction was concerned. But at the same time, we also were so tired as teachers of having PD that was ineffective, or like PD where you're sitting and getting, it's the same stuff. It's the same thing that kids can't stand. Adults can't stand it either. If they've been sitting for 25 minutes hearing one person drone on and they've not gotten anything they needed out of it, that's a problem. And there was I don't want to dog our district, but we had a lot of that kind of PD going on. I think a lot of school districts do.
I think most, right. So you're not dogging them. That's just a reality.
That's just a reality. And, and I think a lot of it too is that it was important to try to sort of think as though these teachers that we're now helping sort of as students, and put ourselves in their situation. What would we want to do if we knew we had to sit through a 50-minute session? Would it be fun? What would make it fun? What would make it more energetic? What would make it, worthwhile and then applicable to everybody? And that was kind of our goal. And so the game side of it started with badges. And so we sort of set up this PD program where teachers would go out and explore some sort of technology. They'd come to us when they needed help. They'd use it in the classroom. They would reflect on it. They'd show some evidence of them using it. They'd submit that, and then we give them a badge and we celebrate. And they get I don't know if Wisconsin has the same kind of thing, but we have professional development units that they have to get. Teachers have to have like 120 throughout a year. Is it something like that in Wisconsin? I'm not 100% sure.
We as of last year just switched.
That's right. You guys got rid of it
to lifetime licensure. So.
Holy cow!
That's right. I just heard about that this week. I forgot about that. So yeah, so we don't have that in Illinois. So we unfortunately have to get a whole bunch of CPDUs every 5 years to get relicensed.
Which I'm just gonna give a wee bit of a plug here. Coming up in a little bit, starting August 1st, is the Hive Summit, which you people in Illinois can get.
That's right.
Continuing sort of education.
We certainly can, and we are sharing that as much as we can. So hopefully we'll have lots of people involved.
All right, so you started with this. I do have to ask a follow-up question because I know if I was a listener, I'd be like, oh man, why didn't he ask this? What system did you use at first to do that? Like, so if you have like this district, even if you had a building with 30 teachers in it, like how did you manage, like you said that they like submit something and you give them a badge, like how did all that work? What's the actual logistics?
We built our own. This whole idea was, jump in head first is what you say, right? Don't
That's
start
right.
small. Jump in head first.
Just do it. Just dive in.
Yeah, so all of this was born out of a visit to a district in Chicago, and we really wanted to kind of recreate the professional development. So we took our district name, which is Triad, and used the word advances and created a hashtag called Try Advances, and that's our program. And we wanted our badges to not represent like applications like Google Drive and Google Docs and things like that, but we wanted them to represent more of concepts and theories. So what we did is we tied the badges to our evaluation system. Nice. So in essence, as teachers work towards integrating technology into their curriculum, they are also gaining evidence towards their evaluation that they can just turn into their administrator. So we wanted to try to kill two birds with one stone. So in developing that, we set up a system using Google Forms, Google Sheets, the Autocrat add-on and things like that. And what happened is they would submit a kind of a plan of what they hoped they wanted to do for each badge, and then we would just take a look at it, and then they'd have an opportunity to ask if they wanted any suggestions or guidance from us. If they didn't, we left them alone. If they did, then we jumped in and helped them as much as we could. And then they implemented whatever lesson they were applying the badge towards, and then they submitted a reflection. And then once they're done, Autocrat and Google did all the magic, and then they had a PDF document that they could just turn into their principal as, hey, here's how I covered domain 4 of Danielson's domain. So that, yeah.
My district uses the 4 domains.
Danielson?
That's right.
Yeah, Danielson, yes. So that's kind of how it started. Yeah.
Right. So in your original rollout, it sounds like you gave people a lot of sort of choice.
Yes, it was all choice.
A lot of
We
choice.
didn't really give them much other than ideas. We sent out emails every couple weeks with here's this new stuff we found. Here's what came across our email. Try this out. And that would be enough to get a lot of teachers started. But for the most part, we didn't do really any big group PD or anything like that. We just kind of let them go. And then they, other teachers saw teachers in their grade levels or teachers in their building doing something cool, and then that would kind of spur on the next thing. So
that's what I was
it was good for a first year. Yeah,
that's what I was going to say. I love the two parts that I love about it is one. Actually, it was my second thing, but I'm going to just jump to it. Is I like this communal aspect, right? Like you just see and you're building this tribe, all trying to move forward, but forward in different directions, right? So then all of a sudden you start to hear about hey, my students were in your English class, Adam, and they were saying they loved this thing you're trying. Right. Or it's conversations around the water cooler, right? What's what are you doing? You are also doing domain 4. What was the sort of project you went? Which leads me to my other thing I really love, and I want to hear how to work for you guys. I love that you didn't make it application specific. I love that, because I feel that's way out of the box. I mean, that really allows somebody to try and apply all sorts of things, because you're not pinned down to I'm just going to get the Google Classroom badge. Yeah.
Well, and that was part of the issue when we started putting this together. We really wanted to avoid that as much as possible, because when you set them up that way, it just totally, it applies to a certain number of teachers, but not everybody. And that was exactly the problem we had with PD. When you sit down in a big group, half the people in the room are I love that. And the other half of the people in the room are I've got grading to do. And we didn't want, any of that to be going on. So we figured we'd let it wide open. And after the first year, how many do we have, Mike? We had something like 85 total different applications or websites.
Yeah, we did a pilot. We did the pilot group first in the spring of 2017. Then we rolled it out full time last year. And then we've had between 80 to 90 different technology applications explored in the five badges. We actually have 4 domain badges, and we aligned them to our district. So we have the T badge, which is the tactician. The R is the reflector. The I is the instructor. The A is the architect, and the D is the developer. And the developer is a choose your own adventure kind of badge. But the TRIA, they all tie to Danielson domains. So if they need something specific for domain 2, then they can go for that badge that correlates with domain 2 as far as the TRIA. But we wanted that developer badge just in case someone says, you know what, I really want to learn about Edpuzzle. and I'd like to incorporate it. It doesn't really necessarily fit in this, or I'm not in an eval year, so I want to go ahead and work towards the developer badge. So then we get a sense of competition. Teacher so-and-so has the T and the I and the A. Well, now I need to get the R and the D. And then we start producing stickers and buttons and, digital badges that they can put in their emails and websites. And, it kind of just spurred on a little bit of, more excitement towards achieving these badges.
And I like what you said there about competition, but I liked how you described it. If you break it down, a lot of times it's just raising an awareness, right? Like sometimes it's not competitive. Like at least for myself, like I'm not trying to beat the teacher next to me, but that raised awareness, when I hear like, wow, like Adam's doing something cool, Mike's doing something cool, it makes me reflect on kind of where I'm at professionally, and it pushes me to want to like up my game a little bit. Right. And I just think that's, I don't know. I mean, I think it's similar to like the badges that the Boy Scouts use, right? Like
absolutely,
those aren't it's not competition. It's not like, oh man, he's so baller at being a Boy Scout and you're terrible.
Right.
Those are just meaningful experiences, and which again, the way you themed yours out, I think is way more meaningful, right? It is about like, it's the friendship badge, right? It's not like how to use like the pocket knife badge.
Well, and even those badges are maybe a little bit app specific, like the leather working or the camping or orienteering or whatever. By the way, yes, I was a Boy Scout. But but then you have all different ways you could achieve that. You don't have to do something specific, right?
Right. Like that's where I think it's like the whittling is the activity, and that's the badge. It is not like the Swiss Army badge. It's not like you have completed that, how to like not hurt somebody with this. Like,
exactly.
Right? Like it is an experience. It's like you learn to whittle, you learn to work with leather in whatever it means, whether that means you made a wallet or if that means you made a full on like leather chaps for your dad riding the motorcycle. Like that's your choice.
There's many different paths to get to the badge.
Yeah.
It's not one direct path.
No, but I think, Mike, we should have a leather chaps badge. That would be pretty sweet to implement this year. I would love to see how people go in that direction.
I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah, I know. But that did sort of spur, that was our starting point. Because like I said before, we wanted to have a program that made us important enough to keep our jobs. That was a big part of it. A lot of it was job security. But at the same time, we wanted to be so wide open that we were also not creating courses or anything like that for this many. I mean, there's no way we could have made 85, tutorial videos or gone through and sat down with people to teach them how to use this many different applications. So it worked out great for us. And now we have, a surplus of ideas of ways teachers use this, and they all can see what each other have learned. And so that really helps. And as far as the gamification side of it, it's really just the badges. We want to incorporate more. Like obviously, this is still within the first year and a half of existence. And this year, we're working with our local Chamber of Commerce to get some like gift cards and coupons and stuff, so they can earn points and then turn those points in for gift cards and coupons. And so it's almost like a store, a currency type thing. But this whole idea of gamifying led us to our Google certification game because we did it the first year we did. And Mike wrote all this down because I couldn't even remember how much it was. But we sat down with these people doing Google certification like a boot camp, and it was like 3 hours a night, 4 nights over
2 nights a week.
Yeah,
it was like 16 hours that we were invested in the evenings for them to work through the Google certification, because our district is this year it's 1-to-1, 3 through 12, and there's an importance and a stress of becoming a Google certified educator. So we started that process in the spring of 2017, which is kind of the second part of branching off of our Try Advances, is leading into that Google certification game that we created, which has more aspects of the gamification.
Right. And we sat there with these people talking about, here's how you can make your class more engaging, and here's how you can do this. And they're all sitting in a circle staring at us. We're doing the exact opposite of what we're trying to get them to do, which is, it didn't really work for us. So the second time around is where we created the game. And so basically, what you guys were talking about, and even, the last couple episodes we just listened to this past week, and you focused a lot on theme. And that was our big thing. We wanted to make sure we picked a cool theme to start. So our first one is we actually created two, but the first game was it's called Obsidian. And basically, you're a member of the secret organization, which is called
Chrome.
I remember now. Yeah, it's Chrome.
Coordinated Humanitarian Resource Office for a Modern Earth.
That's it. That's
Whoa.
it. Yeah, so it's got a sweet logo and everything. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're a member of the secret organization, and basically what the teachers do is they'll go to the Google side, because Google has its own units. And they go through all more of the theory stuff. So they'll do like Unit 1, then they'll come back to our game and they'll sign in and they'll receive a password. And then the password takes them to, Mission 1, which is something having to do with whatever was in that unit. And the first ones, they don't quite get too in depth. So we had them introduce themselves, they create a flip grid, and then they sort of filled out a tech survey saying how comfortable they feel with certain technology. Then they go back to Google and do Unit 2. And then they come back and do Mission 2, which gets a little bit more in depth. And by the end of it, they're sending emails to like fake, other secret agents, and they're receiving emails from the Chrome organization, and they're creating documents, and they have to, create a slideshow and a website, and they're looking for secret hidden messages. I mean, it just got so in depth, but what they're doing throughout is the actual activities that they would eventually have to do on the exam. It's not laid out that way, but that's, they're still getting all that practice. They're still having to create this stuff, and it was fun. It was really like a good time, and so much more enjoyable than sitting down for 2.5 hours and trying to stay awake.
And we kind of pulled that out of the air. We learned
best
about
ideas ever.
Yeah, we learned about you and your gamification and Explore Like a Pirate, and started exploring that, and we were just like, we've got to do something different. Right. And we're lucky enough that our district kind of, when we have an idea, they let us run with it.
That's
and
awesome.
We said, hey, we got this harebrained idea of gamifying our Google certification, and they're like, well, we don't know what that means, but go ahead.
Yeah.
So,
we don't know what that means, but
we created it. And we started creating the storyline and things like that. And, as you know, it's very, very involved and intense and stuff like that. But, we didn't know what kind of reception we would get from our staff.
Yeah, they're adults.
Our
remember, they're adults.
They're not 12-year-olds. Right. So our district told us, we've got so much PD dollars for X amount of people. And we're like, okay. So we sent out a feeler. We actually went and met with teachers because we felt like onboarding them would be better in person. So we showed them the website that housed the game. Adam made a very cool trailer to go with the game to kind of, entice them and kind of hook them in. And, we just felt like, we needed to really present them this in person. And when all was said and done, we had double the amount of people that we had budget for that wanted to play our game. So that right there told us, maybe we're onto something here.
Yeah.
So,
and again, the district was like, go for it. They let us do everybody, because we didn't want to cut anybody out. But it was fun.
Awesome
to hear. So we do obviously the Google side, which is cool. But then and we talk a lot about side missions, and we talk about that other stuff. So we added with each mission some other non-Google piece of interesting technology. Like the first one is Flipgrid, and then we give them a short little tutorial, and then in order to earn extra XP, they can complete certain objectives for that. And as they get more points and they level up, they move from what was it? It was like a intern to yeah. I mean, it's awesome. Eventually, they get all the points. They're directors of Chrome. It's so great. And so the Hall of Fame and everything. It's fun.
Each one has a secret agent name.
Yeah, everybody's got so we could do a leaderboard without
leaderboard. Yeah.
Anyway, so we're just going to both talk over the top of each other. But
I love the enthusiasm that you both are expressing about teachers learning PD, which typically, as you're saying,
it's not very exciting.
It's not very exciting, right? Like, this is not how people usually talk about it.
But what we really liked about it is that they were getting exposed to a ton of tools. I mean, by the end of it, they're going to see all 12 Google tools, and then they're going to see these 12 other tools. So by doing all this stuff, they're seeing 24 new things that they may or may not use in their classroom. But that is so much better than sitting in, a 50-minute session on one tool that they probably won't use.
And they're doing it on their own time.
On their own time, right.
Yeah. So it's self-paced.
And then support where they need it. So if they fly through one unit and they don't need us, then they just fly through that unit. But then they get to something they've never used before, like Google Groups or, Google Earth or something like, I've never used this. Then they look at us and we come in and we can, help them out where they need to. So it's efficient for one. And I think it's enjoyable as well for the teachers and us. It makes it fun for us. I mean, we had a great time putting that thing together.
That's what I often say about gamification. It's like, it's good for students and we should be student focused, but let us not forget, if you have a positive attitude, if you're happy going into work, if you're proud of what you're putting together, it does change the dynamics for the students. And I have had more fun teaching in a gamified experience, Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing I often talk about is that gamification, if you ask me, works PK to PhD.
Absolutely.
So Absolutely. Yes, these are a room full of adults, but as you described it, who wants to be in the back of the library, all staring at the PowerPoint of how to use Google Classroom for 50 minutes?
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody wants to be that. The guy that even needs that doesn't even want to be that guy.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So we try to avoid that, and it's been really, really good.
That's fantastic.
That's fun. Yeah, we got all sorts of ideas too. We keep talking about doing a level 2. We've not done a level 2 yet because it's it was pretty time consuming. But we're thinking about maybe focusing on like an Oregon Trail type thing where they're moving along a certain point and you could die of cholera, or we could do some sort of so we could do some sort of Route 66 where they're moving. I mean, there's just so many cool ideas that I think that teachers would really
gravitate
jump
to.
Yeah.
I loved the Obsidian. I think that sounded like
it is neat. Yeah,
I got excited. I'm like, let's do this.
Well, we wanted to make sure it wasn't copyrighted either, so we didn't want to do Mission Google or something like that. We just grabbed a word that sounded kind of creepy and dark, and we went with it. So it's pretty fun.
You want to share the second game, Adam?
So the second game is, and again, we wanted also to kind of get away from doing websites and things like that. So I ended up coding the whole thing into a game. It's an actual game, but it sort of follows this old 80s arcade theme, where you're like a teacher, you're kind of burned out, been teaching for so many years, and then you're playing this old arcade game that used to make you happy as a kid, and you discover this mystery, and these people who were in the game when you were younger are now suddenly in this other game as an adult, and there's this mystery name, and you're kind of going through trying to solve who this Modulus is. The name is Modulus, and it kind of has a sort of a Cody type feel to it. But again, same type of setup. They go through the 12 missions and they're the 12 days and nights, and they kind of go back and forth. But it's all sort of ingrained. And we did that one for districts outside of ours. We had to build that one, after hours on our own time. But we've been using that with other districts, and it's gotten just as good of results and reviews. So it was really fun to put together too.
I love it. I mean,
it's pretty neat.
It sounds like you're taking your district by storm. I love that their support of your work and that it's resonating with teachers, that they're signing up for this. I think that level of autonomy in a game isn't rare, but that level of autonomy in a district for both you guys, but as well as the teachers, to sort of say you create the PD you want. I think that's empowering. That's awesome. I'm inspired. Hopefully others out there are. I've helped people gamify PD before. It's interesting. It's a different beast to tackle sort of gamification on that level, because you're talking about adults, you're talking about a whole district. It can be different, but different doesn't mean bad. I always love the challenge of let's look at gamification for PK. Let's look at it for an AP course that doesn't have a lot of time. Let's look at it for adults. And there are unique solutions that, quite honestly, I get super excited about being in that space, and then it's but I'm not that guy. I'm not the tech coach. But
and we didn't gamify anything when we were teachers. I totally missed that boat. Didn't get onto it until after I'd left the classroom.
Yeah.
And was like, well, that sucks. I want to do that. And luckily we were in a position where we were still able to, Mike and I both were still oh, this is perfect.
But we do have teachers gamifying now.
Right.
As a result of kind of some of the things that we've instituted.
I can totally see that. I can totally see, because now they're actually embedded in that experience, and you're just modeling, once again, another type of pedagogy.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we had a 7th grade teacher. Her storyline is unbelievable. Unbelievable. It was about reading different book genres, and they're trapped under the earth. And the more genres you read, the higher you climb out of the earth. And I mean, she had different. I mean, it was just unbelievable. The structure and the complexity of it, and the students bought into it and absolutely loved it. So
I should chat with her. That'd be fun too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it, man.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, I can't believe it, but our time has just flown
Oh my gosh,
by.
that does fly by.
It does, right? Like
Yeah.
I say it on
I'm like,
like
it has
no,
been,
it's
yeah,
gone.
It's been
So now we have reflection time. Are you guys ready?
Oh yeah.
We're ready.
Whew. This is gonna be a tough one. I think it's apropos to what we're talking about, though. Here's the quote. It is accredited to no one. It's just from the internet. It's a fabulous source for lots of things. Here's the quote. Who dares to teach must never cease to learn. How does that hit you guys? You tech coaches.
That is perfect for what we're talking about. Because I think as we, and I think a lot of people who are listening or watching who would be in the coaching role may just, tend to fall back into the same PD styles that they were used to receiving, which is what we tried to avoid. And, there's a lot, our plates are full, and it's hard to not just say, oh, let's just do a session on it. We've got a slideshow. Let's just say we're going to meet, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We'll run through the slideshow and check that off. And that's what we're trying to avoid doing. And so I think, we hadn't gamified, like we said a minute ago, and we had to learn. And I think a big part of us being able to teach teachers in a new way, which is totally new for us, is to learn new strategies. And that was the biggest thing. But it's reinvigorated me as a teacher. I'm not with students, but I totally get fired up. I think I only took one sick day this year. That's crazy.
I love it.
But it's because I love going in every day.
But he made me sick 3 times.
Yeah.
So how about you, Mike?
Well, it goes back to that, you hear when you're in your undergrad about being a lifelong learner. Not to pull something out of the 90s, but it still holds true. If you aren't willing to learn new things and stagnate, you're doing a disservice for everyone, not only the students, but everyone you work with. So, you always want to challenge yourself to learn new things in order to better yourself, which ultimately affects everyone around you, students, parents, teachers, everyone around you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I would echo some of the same themes. Just if we're going to stand up there and sell being a lifelong learner, if we're going to sell growth mindset to our students, we got to also drink the Kool-Aid. We got to put ourselves in a position to learn. This last year, I started on my YouTube channel these 5 for 5 challenges, which are you're trying to do one thing for 5 days in a row. See if you could get it, be 5 for 5. And they didn't have to be academic minded. Like one of them for me was a cooking challenge that I tried. But what I loved is the level of empathy it gave me for my students, because we ask our students all the time to learn something that they did not know how to do, and then we ask them to do it on top of a full school day. So to go home and have to learn a new recipe, try a new thing from scratch, all in the work week.
Yeah,
gave me kind of a greater empathy of what am I asking my students to do, and so I love it. I think it's important that we're always those lifelong learners.
I decided that it was a New Year's resolution. I was going to learn how to code because I didn't know hardly anything about it. And that's what I did. I bought a Udemy course, the online courses that you can do. And just starting January 4th, I watched Udemy videos and it helped. I was able to code all sorts of good stuff now, but I thought there's no way I'll learn how to do this. And
it's amazing with a little bit of intentionality.
Yeah.
You can actually improve quite quickly. Now, to get up to that mastery level, that's where it gets hard, right? That return on investment's tough, but to go sort of 0 to 60 isn't actually as hard as we think.
Right.
So I think that's an important lesson. Well, guys, I got to say, thanks so much for being on the show. It has been a blast having you on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
You guys are...
I'm so glad we ran into each other.
We did. That's a crazy story.
It is.
So we will have to have you guys back on. I want to check in on you guys.
Well, things are changing, like I said, next year. So we're going to take it in all sorts of different directions. So
Right.
Yeah, I would love to have you guys on again. That would be awesome. And everybody out there listening, I hope you have signed up for the Hive Summit. If you haven't, check it out. It's hivesummit.org. And also kind of excited, not super important, but I have redid my website for the first time in a long time. So check that out. You can get at it at explorelikeapirate.com or MrMatera.com. Check that out. It's not the coolest thing, but it was a lot of hard work.
It's pretty cool.
So
Hey,
I want somebody to look at it. Just somebody look at it.
Absolutely.
Everybody, thanks so much for listening. It's always an honor having you guys each and every week. Everybody, enjoy your week and play on.